2 years ago, we discovered we had contaminated soil in our tunnel house, and the tomatoes and everything we tried to plant in there that was sensitive didn't grow. However, I have managed to cure it, and I'm going to share with you exactly how I did that today. Our history here is this place used to be pine forest and it's been completely cleared, and just before we bought it, unfortunately the people that owned it sprayed the whole place with stuff called forestry mix, which is a massive mixture of a whole lot of different herbicides designed to basically kill everything and stop anything from growing. When we decided to put up this tunnel house, we got the guy with the digger and the bulldozer to flatten out an area and to scrape off some of the top layer just to make it everything flat. Thankfully, that incidentally, whatever, removed most of that contaminated soil. However, on one side of the tunnel house, there was obviously a bit of a build-up. We marked on the tunnel house frame with some black tape the areas that we ended up with contaminated tomatoes. Most of my peppers just straight up didn't grow, and a lot of the tomatoes grew but ended up looking really munted and sad looking. Unfortunately, these days there's quite a few different types of broadleaf pesticides and even some grass pesticides that are known for having residual effects in the soil. The pyralid family is one of the most well known. They're the ones that are in things like grazon and tordon, and they're the ones that are most commonly sprayed on hay and most commonly sprayed on grass pastures. The downside to these, of course, is that they stay in the manure, so when the animal eats the grass or the hay, the pesticide passes straight through them and it stays in their manure. This then also will survive the composting process if you manage to compost it, and unfortunately then will be transferred into your soil and can have lasting long-term effects on your plants. So there are a couple of things that we ended up doing which thankfully have worked. The first thing I did was I dug through some activated biochar that we had, which is essentially some charcoal that's been crushed up quite finely and mixed in with some fertilizer for a little while, some natural fertilizer, something like some urine or some compost tea, and then I mix that through. So the carbon has been known to bind a lot of these toxic chemicals. The next thing I did was I bought a product called Humic and fulvic acid. This one is a powdered product, which comes with instructions on how to make it up. You can also buy liquid versions, however you'll find you'll go through quite a lot of that. The powdered version is definitely a lot better bang for buck, and especially if you're shipping the powdered version is going to be way cheaper than shipping 90% water. So to use this to combat the infected soil, what I did was I made it up to the instructions and I watered the soil with it every 2 weeks for 8 weeks, and then I continued to do this over that following season every month for 6 months. The idea with the humic and fulvic acids is it really feeds and boosts the biological life in the soil, and it's these biology that we really need to break down these chemicals. At the end of doing all that, it was time to get planting again, and so this time we grew a grass crop. So you could use oats. For us, we decided to use corn. Grass crops in general are not affected by these broadleaf sprays, and so corn being a grass crop, as being oats and barley, wheat, rye, all of those would also grow. If your problem is a persistent grass herbicide though, this is not going to work, and you may like to try some kind of brassica like some mustard greens. I did continue watering the place with the humic and fulvic acids because it can boost the nutrients in the soil anyway. So probably once a month-ish, I watered the corn with that as well. At the end of the season, we started having self-sown tomato seedlings popping up in that area. So how do we know that this side is now completely healed? One, the self-sown tomato seeds are growing, and they're growing really well. It's the middle of winter at the moment, but you can see there are some tomato seeds here that have popped up. These must have been in the ground, not last year, but the year before. And they've obviously found the conditions are great now, and so they've started growing and they're looking healthy considering it's the middle of winter. This pepper plant is a perennial pepper plant called a rocoto, or I don't know how you pronounce it. Anyway, it's been here. It survived the abuse of the contaminated soil. It barely hung on. Last year it grew beautifully and gave us a whole lot of peppers, and this year, even though it's winter, it's still growing well, and I'm expecting a decent harvest off it this coming summer. If you want to know if your soil is contaminated, or if your compost or potting mix or manure that you're going to put in your garden are contaminated, watch this video up here and I'll tell you exactly what you need to do to work that out. If you've got any questions or comments, stick them in the comments down below and I'll do my best to answer them. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you in the next one.